Yo, what's good YouTube? It's your boy Introspective, and it's time for more Pokemon Sword and Shield news. Now, this game has mixed opinions so far. Why don't you break down some weed? Because we got a new Bongmon, boys.
Smoke weed every—
Okay, but seriously, we have new Galarian forms just like in Gen 7. And say, these look extremely cool. But what's even cooler is that the Galarian form has a need to do this. Giving old fan favorite Pokemon new evolutions is probably the best idea. Series first, and he can also change with a move called Aura Wheel. This Pokemon looks cool, but I think the big selling point is the fact that it goes hangry mode. That's definitely my favorite thing about it. One of my biggest complaints about modern Pokemon and harass you along the way. Kinda reminds me of another community that I know. And there you have it, that's the new Pokemon Sword and Shield update. I think it was the
Welcome, one and all, to Liberty After Dark live stream. We hope that you enjoy the show and will engage in the conversation along with us. So, without further ado, here's your host, Christian Moore.
Excuse me. All right, so now you should be able to hear me, at least a little bit. It still seems like it's pretty quiet. Yeah, that should be better. Can you hear me? Okay, cool. I turned up all my stuff, so it's a little bit better on my end. So, awesome. Let me make sure all this other stuff is working correctly. And then we'll go ahead and get started. All right. So, again, what is up? Hope you are having a fantastic Wednesday night. It is going pretty good over here. So, obviously, we were supposed to do on Saturday the whole breakdown of the Democratic debates, kind of step by step thing. Obviously, that show didn't happen because of internet issues. Things seem to be working today. They replaced the wire that runs from the end of my hallway down to my room. So hopefully that does it. I am skeptical. It didn't take them very long to do. So, but hopefully that's the fix that it needed. So hopefully these issues will be done. I haven't seen any issues since then, but I never really do see issues until they become issues. So that is very unfortunate. But cool. So obviously, if you saw the title of this stream, we're going to be talking about more recent events. We've got a couple things to talk about, but I've been talking about doing a nap episode for a minute now. And so I kind of wanted to leave this up to you guys if you wanted to talk about the non aggression principle and then firearms, or if you wanted to talk about firearms and then the non aggression principle, because they both go together. Either way, whatever we don't do this time, we will be doing next time. But I felt like with the current events and all, I'd go ahead and set us up to talk about firearms, the issue that exists in America right now, and what does or does not need to be done about it. So, whatever you feel like listening to, I am more than prepared to talk about. So, I like to keep things fresh. Make sure everything's good on this end. Yep, internet's still looking good. Zero drop frames. Everything's transferring well. Cool. Yeah, it looks like it's all working. Awesome. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and do the show intro then, and people will show up as they show up. So works for me. Um, yeah, cool. Let's go ahead and do this. How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Christian, and welcome to Liberty After Dark, episode 18, which is awesome. We're almost there to 20. Today, we are going to be talking about a variety of subjects as per usual, but mostly we're going to be focusing around firearms, guns, and the surrounding topics that are involved in this conversation at the moment in the news cycle. So, obviously, unless you've been living under a rock, you are aware of the most recent shootings in Dayton and in El Paso, which have led up to, I believe, 29 people at the point of recording this dead. Still, quite a few hospitalized. It is, without any doubt, a tragedy. There's no situation where that many innocent people being hurt isn't a tragedy. There's no way to justify that level of aggression towards people who did nothing to deserve it. From what we can tell, the individual was a very disgruntled That's a very light way of putting it. A person who just felt like they had no other option other than to take things into their own hands, which is really when you see these kinds of acts of violent desperation. So it's extremely uh, saddening. I hate when stuff like this happens. I really do. I life would be a lot simpler if they didn't, but that just speaks to the ability of mankind to be both equal, if not equal, more, if not equally as hateful as it can be compassionate. But we like to try to focus on the good things just as much as the bad. And yes, bad, terrible things have happened. But it isn't the end of the world. It hasn't been the end of the world in the last few times. It won't be this time. But there are. It is a sad idea knowing that there are people who are no longer on this earth for no justifiable reason. You know, if it's something like a natural cause of death or an accident, these are things that you can rationalize as just almost being unlucky, but so much maliciousness has to go into place to have something like this happen that it makes it difficult to use the same kind of rationalization. This isn't something that's normal, or at least it's not supposed to be. This isn't something that is you can just brush it off and go home the next day and not worry about it or be at peace with the outcome, especially since I believe the El Paso shooter is still alive, or the Dayton. I can't remember which one. I try not to follow the specific people too much because honestly, they should have been dead on arrival as far as I'm concerned. And I know it's an unpopular opinion. Like all people are, deserve a fair trial and blah 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 blah. Don't give me that. Don't give me that. The that man, that's a waste of tax dollars. Hard. Whichever one lived and is now going to go through years of courtroom proceedings to wind up getting a life sentence that he then later on gets cut down to, what is it, like 30, 40 years, something like that. It's just, it's not, no. Let's just save us, how much is a single 9mm round? It is significantly cheaper. It saves us all a lot of trouble. And those who say that vengeance is bitter is are not exactly. I think what is even more bitter is seeing someone get drugged throughout the court systems on your money, being kept alive on your money. No thanks. I'd rather not. Um, I will hard pass on that one. So, with that being said, with that out of the way, and my heart to the families of those who lost somebody, that I think now is an important time to take a step back and look at what is happening and look at what is the reaction. So I think it was within 8 hours, 6 hours, something like that, hours of the shooting, the first person to respond off was obviously the majority of the anti-gun establishment, which involves presidential candidates like Cory Booker, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, people like this. You have your organizations like Americans Against Guns, all of these other groups that get together to try to push sweeping legislation and gun control reform, or what they call sensible regulations. And it was pretty quick. It was pretty brutal, and I get it. I understand where their heart is in the arguments. Um, However, there is, as someone who has time and time again stated that they are trying to remain as ethically consistent as possible, as philosophically consistent as possible, because I feel like if you don't have consistency, then what really do you have? I have to take a step back and I have to, yes, these are all horrible, terrible things that happened, but we have to start asking the real questions, which people don't like either answering or can't make a sensible argument against, which is why would we punish law abiding citizens for something that they have not done? This isn't remotely constitutional. It isn't remote. And, I don't care about the Constitution. I know some of you do. It isn't ethical. It isn't, there's no basis for it outside of the idea that you can police somebody based off of your own sensibilities, which has never been something that we have as Americans tried to live ourselves by. Maybe a select group of people, but never as an American people have we said like, oh, well, my feelings are hurt, we should ban this thing. There have always been counter movements against that. So I feel like, it always makes you out to be the bad guy whenever you're someone who's, pro gun in this situation, especially if you're a white guy in his, 18 to 35 or whatever, because I'm the number one demographic or something like that. I think, there's, when people say that they have things you will say, for example, let's say you're making an argument, you're having a conversation with someone who is against, or like say they want an assault weapons banned and you own an AR-15. You say, well, I have the right to defend my life with whatever means I choose to defend my life with, as long as I don't violate the NAP. And then they say, well, I have the right to feel safe in my home, in my country. And it's like, well, actually, no, you don't. Because feeling safe isn't any sort of right or privilege that anybody is endowed to when they're born. And that's, I get it, that's unfortunate. And we've kind of been taught that that's how it is, and that that's how you're supposed to be, and it's how you're supposed to feel. And I understand that. But it's not true, right? Like no one is born. What I usually say is when you were born on planet Earth, from literally the moment you breathe in your first breath, you are not guaranteed another second after that. There's no one saying, there's no rule that says like you have to live to 85 now. There's no, there's a right to live your life unimpeded, but there's no right to say in a life free of all woes and fears and anxieties. That's not how this works. And so when people say like I don't feel safe with people owning AR-15s in my neighborhood, the correct answer is, well, I don't care how you feel. But people don't like that because this is 2019. And this is the generation of I feel this way, therefore this must happen. And it makes for a very contentious argument because they're coming from two different places. Now, trust me, there are plenty of gun owners who have terrible arguments. Like, if I want to go shoot fully automatic weapons in my backyard, I should. Like, yes, you're not wrong, but that's the wrong argument to be making here. Like, you shouldn't, if I want to blow up trucks in my backyard with an RPG, this is why. I think people who make an argument like that are correct, which is why you can't necessarily be like, no, you're wrong. But I would direct people to make better arguments. Like, I have the right to defend my life in any means fit as long as I don't violate the NAP. Which means that if I want to defend my life with an RPG and I can do so without damaging anybody else's property or injuring anybody who wasn't already violating my NAP and putting other people in direct grave risk, then there's no ethically consistent argument for why you shouldn't be able to own an RPG and shoot it. And this is when I've had this conversation very recently. So this is why I'm very aware of what the counterpoints to these arguments are. And it says, well, there is the ethically consistent argument of we have to maintain public safety, and that's my philosophy, and that's why we do this. Well, you can maintain public safety as far as it doesn't violate individual rights. And the right to self-defense is about the protection of the right to life, which is either one of your natural rights or is one of your intrinsic rights, as some people like to say, because natural rights comes off a little too esoteric for them. As a human being, as a complex emotional creature, or as a being created by a god, if you believe in that line of thinking, endowed with certain rights, then you are entitled to things like the preservation of your life against aggression. If we somehow made that to where that was now less of a priority than the public good, you would start seeing more justifiable, like if we were to keep that ethically consistent, we would see more justifiable cases of the one for the all. And that's not conducive to a modern society. That collectivist mentality is centuries old tribalism that's programmed into us. The future of humanity is focused on the individual. So I wanted to get that out of the way now, because the freer the society, the freer the people. And the natural tendency of humanity over the generations has been to lean towards individual liberty as we've civilized, as technology has taken the place of the necessity for larger organizations and governments and structures. So let's just put all of that out there to begin with. But back to the question at hand. Hello, Liberty Late Nights here. What's up? The there's no, like, let's say I have no criminal background at all. I've not done a thing wrong to anybody. I haven't stolen. I haven't made an aggressive. I haven't hit anybody in like an assault. I've never nothing. I've done nothing. No disorderly conduct. Nothing. I'm an angel basically as far as the law is concerned. There is no argument you can make besides you make me feel uncomfortable having that to where I couldn't have a minigun and brandish it on my front lawn. Sure, you may not like it, but I may not like the fact that you painted your house pink. So this is definitely this is where the two arguments collide, and it's very difficult to bridge a gap between the two. And I've been thinking for a long time about how do we keep this consistency, and how do we bridge this gap? Is there a way to frame this conversation to where we can actually try to make sense to people who don't agree with us? You know, I don't know if all of you guys are gun owners. I'm a gun owner. I'm a very proud gun owner, actually. I think I personally believe that if you're mentally capable of doing so, that you should own at least a shotgun or something. But that's a topic for another day. If you guys would like to have a fun conversation about guns, but this is a less fun one. And the only thing you can do is try to play their own game against them, which makes for a very, very interesting situation. Because the second you try to say, because, you know, like I said, they make an argument based off of their emotional state of being. I don't feel safe with these guns in my community. That is the number one argument. That's the most, you know, and it all they'll bring a whole bunch of other things in here, like, oh, homicides increase by this much when a gun is involved in such a blah 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 blah. Okay, that all comes into the fact that, like, I don't feel safe. That's what this all comes from. And then the gun owners are the pro gun argument, the all laws are an infringement, if you want to use that phrase, argument is I have the right to defend my life by whatever means I choose to. And so what I was getting at, though, the whole sensibility side of the argument is that if you try to make that same argument against them, like, I don't feel safe without my AR-15, well, then they come and attack you personally, like, oh, you know, you can't defend yourself with your hands, buy a knife, or like, oh, you need that big gun, you know, what are you compensating for? And it's really interesting because if you were to do the same thing to them, they would pull up all these, like, guilt-tripping episodes of you, or not of you, but of like gun owners shooting somebody or someone, you know, mass shootings or something like that. And so they're moving the goalposts. It's not a fair argument. And so I figured out that you really can't. And this leads to you just can't bridge the gap. And when you can't bridge the gap, there's no way to have conversation. And, you know, you guys know I hate the term pragmatism. I'm not even suggesting that we compromise on this issue. But what I am suggesting is that if we could have a dialogue about it, you know, we could perhaps, you know, if you wanted to, in Ancapistan, if you wanted to voluntarily sign up for a township that banned the ownership of AR-15s, and you signed on that dotted line and you made that choice, then by all means, do whatever you want. It's Ancapistan. But here, when the 51% decides what happens to the other 49, that's not acceptable. Okay? That's these not being able to come up to with a conclusion or an answer or an understanding and just a mutual agreement to disagree if it comes down to that, then you run into these situations which unfortunately seems like it might be more likely than I would ever hope it would be to where the 51 rules over the 49. And I'm telling you, like, there's no good outcome from this. There isn't. There's no way that this ends well. Okay? Like, they may get ballsier and ballsier as time goes on. Like, it may start. It came out that I think it was the Dayton shooter was using an AR pistol. Let's just be honest, it's an SBR with a armrest. I want one super bad, but thanks for sharing, by the way. I think it's pertinent to discuss the fact that these are things that are very likely going to be on legislation. The red flag laws are already running through the House again with bipartisan support because Republicans want to get elected. And unfortunately, even Republican voters, the FUDs in there will say things like, "Oh, I've lifelong hunter, never shot 17 deer before." And it's like, that's not the point. It's never been about hunting. People who said it was about hunting have shot themselves in the foot now. It is not about hunting. It is about self-defense from tyranny in all forms, big and small. If someone tries to be tyrannical over your personal life, you can defend yourself. If a larger group tries to induce tyranny upon your life, then go ahead, defend yourself. And I would much rather do so with an AR-15 than with a little pea shooter. I'm being completely honest with you here, There's nothing wrong with carrying a, 38 special or whatever, but I'm not exactly going to rely on that for defense of my life and property in worst case scenarios. And call it paranoia. Call it whatever you want. None of that matters. It doesn't matter if it's paranoia. It doesn't matter if it's unwarranted. Literally none of that matters. The only thing that matters is that you have whether you believe it is God-given or whether you believe it is intrinsic and being an emotionally complex creature that is a human being, you have a right to defend your life. By any means you choose to do so, as long as you don't violate the NAP. That's it. And as long as someone has violated the NAP before you do your thing, then you're not violating the NAP by taking care of them. So, and the amount of misinformation out there about firearms is just mind-blowing. It got posted around in a bunch of Facebook groups I was in, but there was an infographic from, I think it was like Vox or CNN, and it was, how many rounds a minute can this weapon fire in this one? And it was like military M4, 900 rounds a minute. It was like civilian semi-automatic AR-15, 1,200 rounds a minute. I don't know what kind of crack you're smoking, but if you can put 30 mags through a gun, 30 magazines through a gun that fast, I mean, okay, in a minute? All right, cool story. And it makes it's not fair. It's not a fair conversation. Not even close. It's actually 40, by the way. I was thinking about it right now. It's 40. Whenever someone is lying consistently and makes arguments that are based in nothing, essentially, compared to someone who's making arguments inside of a moral and ethical code, it gets frustrating. It gets frustrating to have these conversations. And I get it. Most people don't want to have the conversations. And that's fine. I would encourage most people to not fall into the trap of putting yourself out there like that unless you really feel confident. And I'll be honest, you're not going to convince most people. You're not. This is one of those issues. It's like trying to tell people that, what's a good analogy here? It's like trying to tell people that fully socialized medicine is not good for poor people, for example, or anybody really. Then I mean, you're never going to convince someone who is subscribed to that doctrine of that, because they are already originating from a line of thinking that isn't conducive to any sort of rationalization. It is an argument based off of the ethos of the situation. And that's not that, personally, I don't find that to ever be a good way to create a set of rules by which to govern the 49 over of the 51, or below the 51. I don't think, especially if we're going to keep having to deal with this system for the next few decades at least, would be my guess, then at the minimum, well, actually it depends on how crazy they go with this gun stuff. Then yeah, we have to understand that these kind of arguments aren't acceptable. And that kind of gets into what I was sort of alluding to, which is, I have said it before on this show, and this is not a threat. This is my personal fear, is that if these gun laws get too crazy and they get a little too buck wild and they start doing these gun confiscations and more people starting to get affected, I don't know if it'd be a large scale issue, but this is how you get big igloo scenarios. This is how you get people banding together and doing what they got to do. And I mean, most of you guys know at this point, I'm not a big fan. I don't like the idea of people going out there and murdering each other. I'm not a huge fan of it. But at some point, you got to do what you got to do. And I don't want to see that happen. I really don't. Like, I would rather not. I would rather people continue to live peaceful lives without having to get any of that on their hands. And I know that's not like a popular opinion. Most people are like, yeah, boogaloo, woohoo, boogaloo 22, woo. No, I'm not, I mean, like I said, if it were so bad that it was to the point that I'm out there, that we are long gone and this is our only option. Because I am the kind of person who wants to expend all of the avenues possible. But you start doing things like confiscating firearms, and you've jumped so far. Like, okay, taxes are one thing, but like once you start directly disempowering the citizen, you have put yourself into a situation where you have made many public enemies. And so this, I mean, I know which side I'll pick. Let me just put it that way. And if those guys up in the White House think that they are going to make anything safer by pushing out some kind of widespread, let's just play the what if game. Let's say Bernie Sanders or one of the, Elizabeth Warren, Cory Booker, which two of those have no chance of being president, but let's just pretend. Because they were all the ones who made the confiscate all the AR-15s, ban the sale, ban the ownership, ban. One, most people aren't going to turn them in. Most people won't. It's like the New Zealand situation. You'll get like 2 or 3 of them turned in per state, per large city, maybe. The rest of the people are going to hold them. So what's going to happen? Alphabet boys are going to start kicking in doors to collect your guns, and you're going to go to jail for it. And one of two things happens in that situation. One, your house explodes the second they kick the door in. Or two, you go to jail, and then every single person that you know that just went to jail for owning your guns' house explodes when the Alphabet Boys kick the doors in. So Peggy says Missouri made it illegal for anyone to pass gun laws, but federal laws override state laws. So if the federal government says your guns are illegal, it doesn't matter what the state says. Now, I get it. I get what you're saying, is that the people of Missouri have said that they want to keep their guns, which is the point that I'm making, is that unless the United States government plans on invading Missouri basically to take their firearms, they're going to have a hell of a time doing so. The 10th Amendment does not protect states in that capacity. They can add on to existing law or create law when there is no federal jurisdiction, but federal law overrides state law, which is why the federal government is allowed to do such tyrannical things. This is why, even though states have legalized weed, it's still illegal on a national level. It's still a class 3 narcotic or whatever it is. And that's why if you own a dispensary, you can't get a bank account for your business because it's illegal on the federal level. They're not supposed to ship across state lines either because then it's a federal offense and it's illegal federally. Now, a lot of people do it, but now I get it. States, I mean, I'm a huge fan of compartmentalizing the state. Break it down, dude. Break it down into as small of chunks as possible. That is the most effective way, the most peaceful way, the most conducive way to self-governance. I'm 100% a fan of that. But the system that we have right now is not that. The 10th Amendment does not protect states in this kind of situation. It's just like all of these, like, say if you were to legalize abortion throughout the whole thing, and then the federal government said it's completely illegal, all of those would be null and void because the second it happened, or Schedule 1, I'm sorry, yeah, thank you, Schedule 1. I couldn't remember if it was like 3 or 1 or whatever it was off the top of my head. Yeah, it has always been this way. Now, whether the federal government enacts on it is one thing, but it's not a fun time. Yeah, exactly. It's so, I could talk about this for forever, and I think I've pretty much said what I need to about my worries for the future. Well, let me put it this way. I own several firearms that could potentially become legal. And I'm going on a cruise that's a gun owner cruise. And they may all fall into the water. It's a possibility. I don't know. It's anything happens. So, they may get buried in sealed containers for all I know. I just, if they think people are just going to lay down and take it, they have another thing coming. And it's going to be ugly. It's going to be ugly. So, let's move on to the next part of this, which is now the Republicans trying to, the pro-gun Republicans, let's just put some tiny little air quotes around that, are making these absolutely pathetic arguments. Horribly pathetic arguments that are just so terrible. Good God. They are worse than the Democratic, the socialists, whatever you want to call them, leftist, heartfelt ethos arguments. I resonate with them more than I do these Republicans. And they say things like, oh, video games are causing violence. There have been over 20 studies. This one is from the Associated Press that they cite. It says that a collection of 23 studies shows that one of them, from 1983, is the only verifying study that shows that there's any connection between possible violence and video games. And what they did, though, is that they took kids that were already violent and then seen which ones played video games. And they were like, oh, the majority of these violent kids play video games. There must be a link. Instead of doing the sensible thing, because they wanted to skew the data, instead of doing the sensible thing, like the other 22 studies that have been conducted from 1986 all the way up until the most recent one, which concluded in 2017, all have followed children throughout multiple years of their life, tracked what games they played, when they played them, how much they played them. And then all of them have shown that there is no direct link between playing video games, violent video games, rated M, T, E, none of it matters. They all are just as equally likely to be violent or non-violent as the other. So whenever I see Republican after Republican after Republican getting on the news and saying video games cause violence, there's literally nothing to support that. Literally nothing. Not at all. And I love the memes that come out of this stuff. And let's talk about mental health, okay? Let's talk about mental health. There is definitely, without a doubt, something wrong with the people that do this kind of thing. I'm not going to suggest for a minute that it isn't. But whenever you start talking about mental health, you start getting into an incredibly slippery slope. Because we have two warring movements going on in America, because America has two problems with mental health, at least in the way that the right sees it. And this is one case where I almost agree with the left more than I do the right again, because we have two issues. We have a self-identification issue, because no one knows you like yourself, and you know if there's something wrong, right? The second is whenever you start saying things like people who have a mental illness shouldn't be able to own guns, or people who have mental illness, you know, shouldn't be able to do XYZ, or we should lock them up involuntarily, or we should, without due process, take their firearms, or you start saying crap like that, that is definitely hyper tyrannical garbage out of Donnie T's mouth. You start saying things like that, then you have this like circle. You've created the circle of endless non-identification and people doing things that they shouldn't be doing. So let's say a specific category of mental illness is the problem. Do you think depression causes people to go on massive rampaging sprees? I don't know. I've met a lot of people with depression. Now, there are people who commit suicide off of depression, which is one of the leading causes of death of suicides is firearms, which blows firearm statistics out of the water when you look at America. So I think people should be more willing to identify that they have a mental health illness so that they can get treatment. But if a gun owner says, man, I have depression, I need to go talk to somebody, and then they get red flag lawed and all their guns are taken away, that is horseshit. I don't care who thinks it's for their safety. That person is still responsible for their own safety, not the government. They're not. No one is responsible for your own safety but you. Other people can do what they want. But like I said, if me as a gun owner, if these red flag laws pass and something is wrong with me in the head, I'm just not going to tell anybody. Because if I say, look, I'm going through a really rough time, like let's say something terrible happened to me, like I lost my significant other died in a car accident or some tragedy, and I was down, I was depressed, and I needed to go talk to somebody, and then my guns get taken away. Oh my God, you bet your ass I'm walking into some building. It's game over at that point, is basically what I'm saying. It's game over. And so the majority is handguns, but they attack the AR. Well, they're not just going after the AR. They're going after high-capacity magazines in general. They're going after pretty much any rifle cartridge that is fired out of a semi-automatic format for the most part. And you're right, most deaths are by handgun. Most suicides are by handgun. Most homicides are by handgun. True. That's fine. But it doesn't sound as good to say, two people died by a handgun in this incident, or one person was shot and killed. It's a lot easier to make an argument for like regulating something whenever you can say 29 people in a weekend died by two people. Like another quote from Donald Trump, what did he say? It was something to the effect of, the fact that one man was able to do this much destruction is unbelievable. It is unbelievable. It's terrible. It's awful that someone would abuse that power that is given to them. But that is what human beings do. And that's not to justify his actions. That's to simply state the fact that we cannot allow our personal biases and our personal emotions to get in the way of individual rights. We can't. If healthcare is a right, you bet your fucking ass that my ability to defend my life is a right in any way that I see fit. If that means I have a freaking McNuke in my backyard so that nobody attacks me, so be it. So be it. And we're back to square one again, you know? It's not video games' fault. You might maybe be able to say it's someone's mental illness that is the problem. Sure, fine, whatever. It is mental illness. Cool. Let's just say that the worst mental illness that you could possibly have that makes you violent does that. I do not believe that depression should be deemed on the same level as like a full-blown dementia or psychosis or something. You know, if you want to make some kind of suggestion that people who are in these like dissociative disorders to where they can't correctly interact with the world could potentially be more of a threat than another person, I would say, okay, yeah, there's definitely a conducive argument to make here. But to say like, man, Sally's sad, we got to take everything away from her and strip her of all of her natural rights so that Sally won't be sad anymore, right? No. No. To say that video games, that Home Slice playing Farming Simulator over there is going to go shoot up a school. No. You're wrong in every way, shape, and form. To say that someone has the right to disarm you and damage your equipment. Ooh, think about that. People have talked about that. Breaking people's firearms, like breaking into people's homes that they know have guns, damaging them, like sawing barrels off, stuff like that. You can always buy a new barrel. But still, that's someone breaking into your property and damaging your firearms. Or stealing them and disposing of them that way. Or violating red flag laws and reporting you to the police without a justifiable cause. Because those are subjective laws. You got to remember, you don't have to self-identify. Other people can identify you. So let's say you really pissed off some people. All you got to do is get a group together. Say, I mean, I don't know the exact number, but let's play pretend here. Let's say 6 or 7 people come together and say, look, I think this person is a danger to our community. He needs to have his firearms taken away. Bye-bye guns, I guess. Maybe maybe you weren't paying your HOA fees on time, and so they just decided that they would report you and get your guns taken away because they know you've been spending your HOA money on firearms instead. See, I don't like talking about this stuff. I like talking about how we can come together to face against the oppressors, right? But right now, what I feel like I'm doing is damage control, honestly. Yeah, or the government will fake it and come for your guns. Yeah, I mean, wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. And I don't want to see things like this happen because I know what's going to happen. And I'm pretty sure I'm legally not allowed to say what's going to happen. But I know what's going to happen if they pass this kind of stuff. If they go all gung-ho on these gun laws and they pass AR-15 confiscation and they pass magazine capacities and they restrict, let's say body armors and stuff like that, and they take away people's ability to have suppressors, and they just pass all these amazing sweeping changes. I know exactly what's going to happen. Most of you in here know what's going to happen, and it's not going to be fun for anybody. And nobody will win. And I mean, someone will win, if you know what I'm saying. But I just don't. How about we just avoid? No, we're not England. Actually, I don't think that's what'll happen. I don't think at all. I think people are going to start camping out in their igloos, really big igloos, and it'll be not a fun time, especially for the people who don't want to participate in that because they won't have any choice. It's either participate or not participate and still be affected by all of the negatives of participating. So, yeah, confiscate the butter knives, right? I don't want to see that happen. Really, I don't. First off, I don't want things to stay the same either, because I want bump stocks back. I want the I want a lot the Firearms Act repealed. I want the basically every ban passed in the 60s through the 80s repealed. Trump is trying to be another Lincoln. I'm not saying that either. Um, I don't think in modern times it's very likely that a president could be I mean, I'll just, there's I not only do I not believe that that's a appropriate answer to any of this, I don't think it's very likely that he's in any mortal danger at any given moment. Otherwise, somebody probably would have. I mean, he's already had attempts on his life. Every president does. There was a guy who was like camping out near the White House with a sniper rifle waiting for Obama. I say sniper rifle with a heavily modified bolt action Remington that was just waiting for him, hiding out in a building. And then they spotted him before he spotted them, and they got him. But I mean, it's always a possibility, right? But I'm not advocating for that either. I'm a non-violent person when it comes down to it. I want everybody to live long, peaceful lives with one another and not have to. I want no reason to own a firearm. I would love to live in a society or with the people who I trusted as much as I trust myself, but I don't. That's not how the world works. That's not reality. So it's up to you to defend yourself. It's up to me to defend myself. And if we decide to defend each other together, that's great. That's cool. But do you think a war will kick off in Area 51 if all those people show up over there in September? First off, I don't know how many people are going to show up, if anybody. But let's just pretend a few thousand people show up and they decide to try to storm Area 51. Someone might get shot, and that could be bad. That could be very bad. What I think is a lot more likely is that whoever shows up will go to the gate, and then they'll be like, "You need to leave right now. We're going to give you an escort, and then you guys need to skedaddle." And then they'll cause a ruckus, and then they'll arrest as many people as they can while the other ones run away. And then that'll be that. But who knows, man? History is weird. People are going to start building big igloos in the desert, maybe. All I'm saying is that we live in tumultuous times. We really do. People, for like the last 3 decades, for forever, people have been saying that. Since Ronald Reagan. Before that, people have been saying, this is it. This is it. This is as far as the line goes. And the line goes a little bit farther. But we have a highly politicized culture in America now. Everyone is like, where was the good guy with the gun? They were surviving the situation. Take care of yourself. Not everyone's a hero. Yeah, I'm sorry, guys, but I'm like, if any of you've taken like a self-defense course or like a weapons safety course or anything like that, most good instructors will tell you if you can remove yourself from the situation, do it. Do it. Because the second you start trying to pop off rounds with your little plinky, little plink, 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 is the second that guy blasts away. Maybe you get him. Maybe you do. Maybe you die. All right. Then your number one priority is your personal safety. Or if you have children, your number one priority is their safety, then your safety. In that order. And they usually are in tandem, especially if you're carrying. Not right that they extort us through forcible taxation and have a secret base that they won't allow people to know what's going on. If you think that's the only secret base, oh boy. No, yeah, of course. I mean, the government hides things from everybody. And if you were to make the ethical argument that we all own the government, they shouldn't be able to hide anything from us. But then they'll make the national security argument, which proves that they actually don't serve us. They serve their own interests, but they claim that those interests are our interests. So it's not, yeah. Yeah, they're a gang of criminals. Yeah, exactly. Hmm. I knew this was going to be a tougher episode, and we're going to be talking about the nap next time because I feel like we can get all this stuff about like why you should be able to own guns to begin with today, and then next episode we'll talk about why he or how you should be implementing those tools if ever, right? I would love to be the gun owner of like many others who never has to shoot a person. I would love it. That is that is one of my highest goals, is to never have to shoot someone. I would hate it, but the option always exists, or the threat, I suppose, always exists, and you have this is kind of a bold statement, and I can't tell you what to do with your life, but I think it's irresponsible to not, especially if you have children, it is irresponsible to not have the capability to defend yourself. I'm gonna be honest. Like, you always see like the TV shows of the dude with like the baseball bat coming down the stairs. All right. If someone kicks your door in, most of the time all you have to do is rack a shotgun and that person is directly out the door. Or you just let one loose down the hallway. Next thing you know, he's either dead or gone. Or somewhere in between. Especially if you have kids. Especially if you have kids. Just saying. I mean, again, I can't tell you how to live your life. You get to make those choices. If you're not comfortable with it for whatever reason, that's your prerogative. But I know exactly how I would do it if it was me. So, mm. But I think that is pretty much all I've got for today. Unless any of you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns that you want to throw in before we close up here. Peggy says, I wouldn't want to shoot anyone either, but if a robber kicked my door in, I'd just shoot the kneecap. I wouldn't do that, honestly. I would just let them have it. They're more. If you just wound someone, they're likely to sue you for damages because you injure their knee, and then they'll make the argument that, oh, she shot me in the knee, and now I can't, work, and I need damages paid, blah blah blah, and it happens, particularly in places that aren't in the deep south. But I'm just saying, general wisdom is if you are willing to shoot someone, just commit. Okay, just commit. If they've done something egregious enough for you to shoot them, you just commit. Just do it. Okay. I'm not saying dump the magazine either. You got like a CZP-09. You got, was it like 18 plus one? Might be a little much, but 4 or 5 never hurt anybody. So, or actually, it hurts a lot of people. But you know what I'm saying. Um, double tap's overrated. Just give them a good pump, and then you're good. Just to make sure they felt it. That's it. Dump it and claim temporary insanity. I'm not an expert on law. I'm not supposed to be giving legal advice. I don't know if that would work. I just know what I've been taught. So, not that I'm planning or anything. It's all right. I already said the big igloo on this show. So, if I wasn't already on a watch list, I definitely am now. Yep. I don't own a gun. Fortunately, I'm in the country too far for intruders to bother. Well, yeah. See, that's good. Yeah, it probably won't show until the YouTube API updates your profile picture, so that might be about an hour, probably. So, oh man, I hate talking about stuff like this. I really do. I like to talk about fun things, like consciousness or the future of Ancapistan, but this is very pertinent to us, specifically as libertarians, as ANCAPs, as people who want to be free. Should I open or conceal? I would recommend concealed carrying, but whatever fancies you, honestly. I don't care. Um, would I open carry? Maybe on like a range around my house if I wanted to. Um, I would recommend concealed carrying though. You don't want to identify yourself as a target. It's a fine line between intimidating potential criminals and identifying yourself as a target. So I would say, yeah, like, if you're just casually out and about, I would never travel around open carried, especially if I'm going to like big public areas or something like that. I think you're identifying yourself as a target. You're bringing too much attention to yourself. But if you're just say like going to the gas station and your concealed carry holsters on the other side of the room, but you already got your open carry holster on your shooting belt, just throw your rigger's belt on. You got your open carry holster, slide it in there. It scares the current culture. It does, but I don't care how they feel. I care about what makes sense for you. So I don't care if somebody goes, "Oh, he's got a gun," and runs away. I don't. I don't care. I really don't. I'm sorry. They can get over it. They'll live. They will live because I'm not gonna do anything to them. Um, like I knew a guy who open carried pretty much everywhere, and he was like, "Why? Well, why do you open carry?" And he says, "Well, I want a full size gun because my hands are too big for compacts, and I can't fit a full size gun in like an in belt or a concealed carry holster without it being extremely uncomfortable. So I just open carry, and he uses like a half shell open carry that like blends into his jeans a little bit." And he doesn't have like some flashy full stainless weapon or anything. You still know it's there, but it's not like he's walking around with a golden desert eagle on his hip. He just carries a full size right on his hip, and he still does to this day. Ever since open carry was passed in Texas, and I mean, do I necessarily agree with that? No, but I think he makes good arguments about carrying a full size over a subcompact. And also, his holster is big enough to carry an extra magazine in it. Most concealed holsters aren't big enough for that. But if you're a girl, you just carry one in your purse. So, yep. So that I mean, again, it depends on what you want and what you want to carry. If you carry a gun in your purse, just make sure it's hammerless. That's the only thing I would say. Um, if you yeah, if you want to carry something small like a J frame revolver, 6 shots, 38 special, that'll do complete justice. They're hammerless, so for the reasons so that you can put them in your pocket. They're small, hammerless. Don't get a 357 Magnum or anything like that. Just get a 38 special. Or if you want a super tiny regular plinker, there's a lot of subcompact two finger guns, or what I call them, because I can only fit two fingers around the base of them, that are smaller guns. But my kids don't believe me that Whataburger is only in Texas. It's not. It's in Florida as well, and Georgia. Only reason I know that is because I lived in Georgia for a while and I had to drive an hour away to get Whataburger. But Whataburger sold out to a company in Chicago anyways, so it's about to go worldwide and get garbage. So it was fun while it lasted, though. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, but Marius put the kids to bed. That's fine. We're wrapping up anyways. I would recommend a J frame revolver or a super subcompact of some sort. Whatever you feel like personally carrying. Um, I own a J frame. I think it's very convenient just to be able to throw it in your jean pocket and walk around and do whatever you want. So uh, that's it. All right. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I'll go ahead and do the outro real quick. Make sure if you guys enjoyed the show, to go like the Facebook page, subscribe, and hit the little bell on this YouTube channel here, since we only broadcast to YouTube now because fuck Facebook. Um, we have a Twitter. You can follow me there under Christian_M_LAD. And what else do we have? Podcasts will be available for this in about 3 days, most likely. If you want to find the podcast, it's available on any podcast distributor. There'll be slightly edited versions of the live shows, so if you want to cut out some of the fluff, that's a good way to do it. And we also have a Patreon, so if you enjoy the show and you want to throw me $1, that's a good way to do it. The link is either in the description or on the Facebook page. So that's all I got for you guys. And if anybody else has anything for me, I know the delay is super low on YouTube, so I'll give you like 10 seconds to type something up, and then we'll kill it otherwise. Shooting my little guns. All right, looks like that's it. It was a blast. I hate talking about stuff like this. Next episode on Saturday will be significantly more fun. We will be talking about the non-aggression principle. We will be going very deep into the non-aggression principle. So bring a notepad, bring a pencil. It's going to be a good time. Take it easy.